Hi folks, Ryan here with Trail Now. Hey, if you haven't seen it yet, the staff over at the Santa Cruz RTC have put together this neat little interactive map. As part of that map, they make the claim that only about 1% of the corridor is not wide enough to accommodate a trail and a train. It probably comes as no surprise, but here at Trail Now, we disagree with that statement. In this video, we'll be going over the width of the corridor, along with the even more important topic of setbacks. So something that's really important to understand is that there's a big difference between the legal boundaries of the right-of-way and the physical boundaries of the corridor. What I'd like to do is walk you through a quick little example of what I mean. Here we're looking at a little rectangular parcel off of Highland Drive in Aptos, and it measures about 10,000 square feet. Looking at an aerial map, you can see that there's a home on this site and it has a really big backyard. Here's the deal though, if you pull up a topographic map, you can see that the entire back portion of the parcel, it's heavily sloped. About 70% of that parcel isn't even usable, and legally, yeah, it's a 10,000 square foot site, but physically, it has the utility of about a 3,000 square foot site. As far as the RTC is concerned, they'll say that's a 10,000 square foot site and then turn around and use that number to support the conclusion that only 1% of the corridor isn't wide enough. In our opinion, that doesn't add up. So let's take that concept we were just talking about and apply it to a section of the corridor. Here we're looking at Murray Street in Seabright, just west of the Harbor Bridge. Legally, this section of the corridor has a 55-foot right-of-way. However, let's take a closer look on the ground. As you can see, this portion of the corridor is heavily sloped on one side, and it should be noted that because of the alignment of the roadway and the bridge, the trail actually would need to be put on the inland side of the tracks. Here's a cross-section of that portion of the corridor, and the legal right-of-way is 55 feet. However, the actual physical boundary, it's only 30 feet. Now, here's a critical point I want to make, and this is very important. When we say it won't fit, we're not saying you can't put a trail here. What we're saying is you can't put this trail there. This is the cross section from the plan along Murray Street, and simply put, this will not fit. If you did want to build a trail there, you need to remove the trees, excavate the hillside, and build about an 11-foot retaining wall. Now, I'm not a civil engineer, but with a tape measure and a simple sketch program, I was able to put this together in a couple hours. The fact that there isn't a single diagram in the entire plan that looks remotely close to this creates a lack of credibility. Next, we'd like to talk about something that's even more important than width, and that's setbacks. The setback represents the distance between the center line of the tracks and the edge of the trail. Adequate setbacks are critical for railroad operators. Having a trail too close to the tracks increases the likelihood of being hit by debris or rocks kicked up by the train wheels. Also, a close trail can provide access for a malicious individual looking to throw things onto the tracks, at the train driver, or at passengers. Lastly, placing the trail too close to the tracks creates a precedent which would encourage the public to go close to trains and other places that haven't been specifically designed for public access. So what is an adequate setback distance? That's a great question. In 2002, the U.S. Department of Transportation published a document called Rails with Trails, Lessons Learned, and it's essentially become the manual for developing a rail with trail project. The document includes several factors to consider when determining an appropriate setback distance. First and foremost is the type, speed, and frequency of the train in the corridor. So here's something that's really important to know. The master plan for the trail and the feasibility study for the train were done at two completely different times and are totally independent of each other. As a matter of fact, nowhere in the master plan for the trail does it even mention the type, speed, or frequency of the trains that are included in the feasibility study. That's right, folks. The first factor to consider when determining an adequate setback isn't even discussed in the plan. In the 2003 document, Rails with Trails, Lessons Learned, it states that the average setback nationally for a rail with trail is 33 feet. The document then goes on to reference that an adequate setback is 25 feet or higher. People, we're looking at 8.5 to maybe 12-foot setbacks for what's expected to be the most heavily used part of the trail from Santa Cruz to Aptos. Typically, these low setbacks would be reserved for a narrow pinch point. not an entire segment of a trail network. In our opinion, and we think transportation experts would agree, these narrow 8.5 to maybe 12-foot setbacks, those aren't safe when you're talking about a proposed commuter train with up to 60 trains a day going 40 to 50 miles per hour. Folks, what we have right now is a plan for a $127 million trail meant to accommodate a low-speed, low-frequency tourist train. The next time you see a photo promoting a rail with trail, you have to ask, how many times a day does that train come by and how fast? And what are the setbacks on that trail? At some point, somebody will need to ask the question, does this train work with this trail? And we believe that answer is no. To wrap things up here, I'd like to leave you with a quote from the 2002 document, Rails with Trails, Lessons Learned. Again, this was created by the Department of Transportation, and it's meant to be a guide for a rail with trail project. In the document, it states, many types of terrain pose challenges to a rail with trail design. While a railroad corridor may be 100 feet wide or greater, the track section may be within a narrow cut or on a fill section, making the placement of a trail very difficult. The document then goes on to state that a rail with trail and very steep or rugged terrain with numerous bridges and trestles simply may not be feasible given the need to keep minimal setbacks from the tracks, meet ADA requirements, allow railroad maintenance access, and still have a reasonable construction budget. Folks, if that sounds familiar to you, it's because it's the exact same thing we've been saying from day one. Thanks for watching, people. This was a long one, but it's important to get that information out there. If you haven't already, please follow us on Facebook, and for more videos and additional information, go to our webpage, trailnow.org.